Good evening and welcome to a new edition of To The Point. This evening we'll be discussing Egyptian-American relations, especially in light of a high-level visit. The CIA director was in Cairo a few days ago, namely Sunday, to meet with the president. They discussed a number of critical issues pertaining to the region and world security. With us this evening is Dr. Ali Massoud, who is the former Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Political Science at Beni Suef University. A pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you.
The CIA director was in Egypt on Sunday. William Burns came with quite an extensive agenda to meet with the president. How did you see the timing of the visit and maybe the issues that were being discussed in the visit?
Yes, actually it is a very, very critical timing for the visit. Why? We find out just a few days ago Taliban conquered Afghanistan, and in a very, very quick move. This is one issue. What is happening in Syria, what is happening in Libya, what is happening in Africa as well. So we need very quick and also very good move together in order to coordinate our efforts with Americans in order to be sure that the region is much more secure over the short and long term as well. So the area now, or the region now, it is in a very, very critical times of its history. We need our allies, which is United States, which is a superpower, and when it comes to Egypt, as now it is a very essential country in the region. By coordinating their views and their moves, this is going to be very helpful for both Egypt and for United States as well, and for the region as a whole.
Let us start with the most critical file in the region, which is the situation in Palestinian territories. And the reason I'm discussing this file is because this is the longest standing conflict and really the backbone to any security and stability in the region.
Yes.
As tensions escalate in Afghan and the media, the headlines were captured, the situation in Afghan captured the media headlines. Aggression and atrocities were committed in Palestinian territories, but of course they came secondary or on the sidelines of what is taking place worldwide. What do you think took place in the meeting with President Sisi regarding that issue? What steps can we expect from the US administration in that file?
Yes, actually the last war between Palestinians and Israel in Gaza, and when Egypt actually stepped up and could stop this war, emphasized to what extent Egypt had the power in the region, to what extent actually Egypt is acceptable to actually intervene in such issues and to solve it, to emphasize the role of Egypt, that no other state in the region can replace it, because some American management, for sure, previous managements, they were actually betting on Turkey to play the role of Egypt in this issue, Palestinian issue, and they actually lost the bet. So now Egyptians are in Gaza, Egyptians are reconstructing what happened as the result of the war. There is a huge trust from Palestinian community for the Egyptian leadership, and trust also about the ability of Egyptian leadership and to what extent they can help them in the field, in land, not only by talking or whatever. Egyptian intelligence and Egyptian Minister of Foreign Affairs are very close coordinating any issue regarding Palestine. We are supporting the Palestinian case since it started 1948. So when something happened in this area and in Palestine, Egypt should be there, and no other country can replace. It is very important role. But the new thing now that after Egypt actually ruled in ceasefire between Palestinians and Israel, there is a huge trust actually between Egypt and both sides, Israelis and Palestinians as well.
Are you expecting progress? Will we see the two sides sitting to the negotiating table and moving towards reaching a two-state solution?
Yes, I expect that. Why? Because it is from the interest of Israeli to settle down and solve this issue. Why? Because it has lots of impact on them. At the last round of clashes between them and Palestine, they saw actually they really can get hurted, and they really can get even attacked in their land that used to be safe in their terminology and in their mind. Now, no, they have to re-evaluate the step they are taking. Also, Egypt now has the power and has the strong word to be listened to from Palestinians and from Israelis as well. United States is very keen to listen to Egyptian views, and not only to listen to Egyptian views, but to coordinate the steps that are needed to finish these recommendations and the Egyptian views in these issues.
The Syrian File, what did you expect William Burns came with regards to that file?
Well, very interesting, because why it is interesting, because at the beginning we see that after President Sisi took office, there were completely opposite view, American view and Egyptian views.
Yes.
And to stress some point really very, very important, that Egyptian foreign policy goal is two things. The first one is to protect the Egyptian national security, and to protect also the Egyptian interests. So when we had the different view and the different stands in the Syrian issue, and it turns out that Egyptian view is right. Even it used to be against the American views at the time. Now we have so many things to tell Americans about how to recover Syria in order to liberate Syria actually from a terror group. We can see also United States is withdrawing from the rest of the world. Step by step it was drawn from Iraq, from Afghanistan, and it's gonna.
Do you see the withdrawal paving the way for a strong nation? In other words, when they withdrew from Iraq, you see on the ground a strong nation. When they're in the process of withdrawing from Afghanistan, do you see now a strong nation?
Okay, when they withdraw in Afghanistan, first of all, let us say they withdraw to save the life of their troops. First, the second one to concentrate in the priority issue they have. They have now a huge competition between China and United States. So United States wants to mobilize their all resources in order to support what is going to happen in the future. So they are not concerned so much about the country they used to be there. They just keeping eye on their interest in mobilizing their resource to keep actually their power and in the international region. So what happened in Iraq as well, but this is not going to happen in Syria. Why? Because still Syria has a good army, even after what all happened. They have a professional army that it is very easy to reform again and to build its capacity again. Egypt is gonna they have a very strong role, not only in Syria but also in Iraq. As you know, as you see now, Egypt have a very ambitious agenda with Jordan and with Iraq in order to form a very, very strong tie, a very strong relation, military, economic, and even scientific relation. So I don't expect that American withdrawal from Syria is going to have the same result as what happened in Iraq or Afghanistan, as the reason I said. Also, there is another aspect. After what happened in Afghanistan, I believe that many of the militant groups are going to head to Afghanistan to have a safeguard state there for them. I'm not going to be surprised if I can see a much better coordination between these terror groups, even they are ideologically different from each other. But now what happened in Afghanistan is going to give them a sense of we can have some success. We can rearrange our situation, and so on and so on. So to conclude in this, yes, the withdrawal of American troops of Syria, it's a matter of time. It's not going to have the same impact, devastating impact as it used to be, as it happened in Iraq or Afghanistan.
William Burns did not just come to Egypt. I mean, his tour in the region was multifaceted. He visited Israel, for example. The timing, why do you think the CIA director decided to come to this region right now?
Okay, first of all, because what is going on in Lebanon, and also this is very, very important, one aspect that's very important that it needs to be discussed also, what is happening in Palestine, it is not that separated from what is going on in Syria, what is going on in Iraq as well. Why? Because Iran actually has a role in both these countries. Now we are a superpower, we are a power, a regional power that emerging and growing very fast. So it's going to actually help United States as a superpower, and Egypt as a regional superpower as well, that they can actually surround this terror group and start to stabilize the countries that suffered over the last 10 years from this terror group. So the timing is very important. Why? Because all terror groups now, they have a hub. Why they have hope? Because of what happened in Afghanistan. For them, it is a successful story that give them the role model that they may try to have.
The fact that this hub, as you called, was mentioned right after the U.S. decided to withdraw. The timing of the withdrawal, was this the time to do this, taking into account that we still have terrorist pockets worldwide which we have not been capable of combating thus far?
Well, terror groups are everywhere, and you find them in Africa, in West Africa, you find them everywhere actually. But the withdrawal of United States from Syria, I don't think that is gonna having a huge impact as the same what happened as what happened in Iraq or Afghanistan. As I just said, that because of the Syrian army, the Syrian regime is still solid.
But the U.S. presence in Syria is not comparable to
yes.
Afghanistan and Iraq. I mean, there's a difference between the number even.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
we have some peacekeeping forces. Part of them happen to be Americans.
Yes.
And a force by itself in an area, it's not really comparable. The issue is their withdrawing, the timing of their withdrawing right now. How will it affect the rest of the critical issues in this region? Will it affect the critical issues
yeah,
in this
for
region?
sure it's gonna affect it, but not that serious. Why? Because it's still now the region is moving toward stability, not toward escalation. The region actually moving toward going out and surrounding the terror groups. Before that, you can find that Muslim Brotherhood at one time they were supporting this terror group everywhere in order to coordinate with them and to support them. But for that time, it is completely different for sure.
The situation in Libya was also under discussion.
Sure. What is happening in Libya now is forming the following steps for how the Libya as a state is gonna be. Thanks God that the foreign Egyptian policy or the foreign policy of Egypt during the last few years actually saved Libya from being separated and being separated to many regions. So this is very important. Now, if Libya failed, this is gonna a huge threat, direct threat for the Egyptian national security, and is gonna also threat the interest of United States as well in the region. So they have to coordinate together. They have to coordinate in order to have a basic or common ground in what is going to be the exit from the Libyan situation. Now, still the Libyan situation is very complicated. It is not called in yet. It is a very hot area now. It is very hot country in terms of what is going on. Terror groups are there. Also, we don't we know that to what extent the United States have says on Turkey in order to withdraw all fighters from terror groups that actually supervised by Turkish army, and the Turkish army actually moved them toward Libya. Turkey is a member of NATO, and it has forces in Libya. And Egyptian view in that was very clear that we are not accepting any foreign army or any foreign existence in Libya. So this is, it has to be who are going to mediate actually the views of Egypt and Turkey. While someone is nominated for that is United States, and because it had the ability to contact with Turkey, and it has the friendship of Egypt and the partnership of Egypt, so it can actually mitigate the situation in Libya between Egypt and Turkey in order to stabilize Libya and to be sure that the Egyptian national security is preserved there.
Also, the Renaissance Dam was one of the issues that were discussed between the CIA director and the president. What do you think the U.S. position on that is?
Okay, first of all, this is a very, very complicated issue, but something I really want to talk about it with the audience in this issue, but it is related to it. After 2011, and after actually when Obama take a stance against even what happened in 3rd of July 2013, CIA and Pentagon and even the Congress, these are the three institutions that were keeping the relation between Egypt and United States in a better shape. So now what is happening? United States knows exactly that the situation between Ethiopia and Egypt is going to escalate. United States knows exactly that Egypt is not going to allow any threat for its water security. United States at the same time wants this area in Africa to be stabilized. So it has to step in and sit with the Egyptian, and I expect that they are gonna sit with Ethiopian. So in the following months, I believe that, and I expect that United States is gonna play much more active role in the dam issue to keep this region stable, because any escalation in this region for sure is gonna hurt the American interest in Africa as the whole, not only in this only in Ethiopian regions. And so also we see the importance of international trade in this region. Okay, so if anything escalating completely is going to affect the international trade, which actually is very important for the United States. So it is a very complicated area. I can see that, and I expect that the American role is going to be much more active over the following months.
The U.S. President, the U.S. Ambassador to Egypt, Jonathan Cohen, said in a statement a few weeks ago that they will be witnessing a new stage in relations between the two countries, yes, which are tied via a strategic partnership that has stood the test of time. And here I'm almost quoting the ambassador. When we say a new stage, what do you think he means by a new stage in that strategic partnership? How are things going to differ? Because we have a new administration in office, yes, now, and he's talking about something new. What will be new in the coming stage?
Yes, that's a very important point. Why? Egypt was playing the role of leader for the region over the century of 19th century and 20th century. After 2011, somehow, the American administration see that Turkey and Iran, and even Iran, they can, they can countries that they depend on in leading the region. For sure, Israel never is going to be leading the region. So this is the two powers. After this view was completely failed, because Turkey cannot, after supporting all Muslim Brotherhood and all these terror groups, it failed in playing the role of leading the region, and its role also it was refused by all nations. Now Egypt is nominated to play this role, not only because the United States wants to do that, Egypt to do that, but Egypt had the ability to do it. United States know exactly not about military capability. No, United States also know that Egypt complete and finished the first stage of economic reform, and it's getting into the second stage of economic reform. What is happening in Egypt now is almost a miracle in terms of economic and in terms of military, in terms of if all things, infrastructure and all things. This means what? This means after 7 years from today, from 7 years or 9 years, Egypt is going to be a very, very strong country in terms of economics, in terms of military. So this means what? It is better for United States to coordinate with Egypt from today. Why it is different as well? Because the Egyptian foreign policy now and the Egyptian leaders both stand for their relation with the superpower, that our relation with the superpower should be at a level of partnership, not dependent. We are not guarding the American interest in the region. No. And I'm emphasizing what we are doing is coordinating with the United States, coordinating with China, coordinating with Russia, coordinating with European Union, coordinating with Japan, coordinating with Arab nations and all countries to do what? To preserve the national security of Egypt and to save the interest of Egypt. So in order to do that, we have to coordinate with our ally. So what I'm saying is why we are in a new step, because we are not only looking for United States, and Americans know that we are, at the same time we are coordinating with them, we are coordinating with China, we're coordinating, we are not dependent on United States, we are not guardians for their interests, we are trying to achieve our goals, the Egyptian state's goals, by coordinating with all powers. For this reason, United States, if does not coordinating with Egypt, well, it is gonna be the cost for them and for their interest is gonna be very high. So they see, well, the partnership with Egypt is gonna to move toward being a strategic relation, even more than it used to be before.
When the ambassador was saying a new stage because the Egyptian position with the United States differed?
Yes, in terms in the future of Egypt also. When actually, this is how can we look in the foreign policy. When we build the relation with country, we are not looking at the country, its situation now or tomorrow, also in the future of this country. And the future of country, Egypt is rising as a regional power, not politically, economically, military, in all aspects. This means what? It is better to coordinate with them. Egyptians now are standing on very sold land and imposing the refuse. And we see how when we bought the Red Lions and when actually we moved in the Mediterranean and actually saved and protected our natural gas and coordinating and this issue with the French and with Italians and with other countries. So when we talk about a new stage, yes, it is a new stage built in a mutual understanding, a mutual respect, building a partnership between these two countries, and building on the expected future of Egypt. Egypt, after 7 to 9 years, is not gonna be the Egypt we are living now, and it's going to be completely different country in terms of economics, in terms of even the political system and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So,
security cooperation was one of the key issues that were discussed in the meeting with the president. How can we see more cooperation, or what are we expecting in terms of security cooperation, especially since we are one of the countries that was constantly talking about the need to unify the agenda to stand against terrorism that is taking over the world, that's destroying parts of the world?
Well, this is an important point as well. After withdrawing the United States from Iraq and from Afghanistan, it also is going to withdraw from many countries. This means what? This is going to give somehow praise for a terror group to grow a little bit. If you look at the Egyptian experience, well, Egypt, the only country in the region that fought terror groups and control them. The same terror group that destroyed Iraq, destroyed Syria, destroyed Libya, the same terror groups came to Egypt, and the Egyptian army and the Egyptian police, they really took over and they can control them and they put the situation under control. So the only country in the region that defeated terror groups, very tough defeat actually, is Egypt, which means what? Which Egypt had a very good experience in dealing with this terror group and how to actually beat them in a war, because it is not a conventional war when you have a war with terror groups. Terror groups in Sinai since 2011, and used to be before that, but by a very small scale. But after 2011, huge of them actually fled in Sinai. They couldn't control 1 meter and raise their flag saying we have this state in Egypt and so on and so on, which happened in other country. Egypt had a very good experience. Egypt has a huge bulk of information and intelligence information in this issue. United States as well have a huge bulk of information. By sharing this information, what the Egyptians have and what the American have, can actually play a very critical and important role in surrounding terror groups and just eliminate them from the region. It's gonna take time. It's gonna be very tough war. But we are successful in Egypt, and the same thing is going to happen. It's going to take time for sure, but the same thing is going to happen in Libya. The same thing is going to happen in Syria. It's the same thing is going to happen in Iraq.
Will we ever see eye to eye as the world on the classification of which group to consider or to label as terrorists? Because Egypt is one of the countries that called on this issue a number of times, that we still do not have a unified label on who is a terrorist.
Yes, actually, and we look at, even when we find that United States sometimes put some terror groups in the list, and after that they took them in the list. In some point, United States looks at the Muslim Brotherhood as the hub for instance, for democratic Egypt, and it turns out to be that is a very devastating, actually, not for Egypt only, but for the whole region. So it is a kind of a very lousy concept. It is, we cannot have a very sharp criteria to say which one to be classified, but the main issue here is attacking citizens, trying to control countries by using forces, attacking just civilians and everyone. But in order for the international community, to do this list, it is a little bit has some politics with it. It is not that a pure technical issue to classify it. No, it has a little bit of politics as well.
Mm-hmm. In the coming stage, Egypt has, as you mentioned, diversified its foreign policy. The percentage or the volume of relations between Egypt and the US economically, taking into account the political development, do you expect us to have stronger economic relations in the future?
Yes, definitely. Why? First of all, what do we mean by economic relations? Economic relations is the two main aspects of economic relation are foreign trade and investment. Now, United States, it is the first trade partner of Egypt, or the most important trade partner of Egypt. The trade the volume of a trade between Egypt and the United States annually exceeds $7.5 billion annually. Mm-hmm. United States has, and American has, foreign direct investment in Egypt reach around $23 billion. So the foreign direct investment in Egypt now $23 billion. The majority of them actually go for energy sector. And if you look to the following step in Egypt and what is happening in the development of Egypt means what? Means creating huge opportunities for American firms to come here in Egypt which actually it is getting with the Egyptian interest. How? Because Egypt actually has a vision to get the know-how, to transfer the know-how from United States, from Europe, from China, from Russia, from other countries, by improving the environment, the business environment in Egypt, and by supporting industry, and by also reforming education system by this technological universities and so on and so on. We expect that the economic ties in terms of trade, in terms of investments is going to be much higher. Also, next years are going to witness a huge relation in terms of education. Egypt now encouraging so much the big universities to come to Egypt and have branches. This is going to be a kind of education, but at the same time it is an economic also ties. Next years are going to witness a huge coordination between Egypt and United States in all levels, and one of them for sure the economic file and economic aspect.
Dr. Ali Massoud, unfortunately our time is up. I'd like to thank you very much for joining us this evening. I'd like to thank you, the viewers. We'll see you same time next week. Until then, good night.